The Vahan data is also not pointing good, huh, by the way. Wait, are we live? Oh, we are live. तुमने देखा नहीं we are live?
Sorry.
हम देख रहे थे, हम we are trying to labor why the market is laboring so much, basically, right? It's up,
Yes. So
it's
first
flat,
off, thank you for joining in.
and clicks,
Yes.
subscribes
Please
and
click,
likes,
please hit like, please hit
so that we can
subscribe
take the
so that we
questions
can take
faster.
Questions. Hiral joining us
Today,
gracing us with her presence today.
yes.
For third consecutive session.
So, why is the market laboring ahead of Labor Day?
He is joining in for the third consecutive session, so markets have to labor.
Huh.
It's like that. No, but I think it's very interesting to see this because there is that cautious view, Sajeet. डर है, fear है market में, but the fear is not with regards to what should we do. The fear is more in terms of, I think, should we now sit on cash? Is that the right decision to make? What is happening with Indo-Pak? Will there be a war, or is it going to be something which will be curtailed? So people are wanting to not take a decision as to which investment bet we should be looking at, but the decision is between sitting on cash or staying put in the markets. I think that is my read right now, from at least a retail market perspective.
Yeah, means that makes sense, na? Means in the sense, you know, you don't want to be a brave heart and taking a position going into a holiday, basically. Key. And especially when, you know, while we are general news channels and others are talking about it, the commentaries which are coming from across the border, from the INB Ministry of Pakistan or others, saying that, you know, 24 to 36 hours something is going to happen. You know, it shows some nervousness which is coming in, and now you have the big four also now talking about, you know, playing down the escalation kind of thing. US is talking about United Nations is talking about, you know, de-escalating the entire thing. While we know that there will be something which will be there, and in what context and in what form we don't know. But point is that as a person who has a portfolio, you will not keep the portfolio open to Friday, given the fact that there is a holiday on Thursday. But interestingly, Hiral, if you look at last 2 days of Nifty futures, FPIs have been net long buyers.
Long, yes.
Yeah, and for 10 days now, I think the FPIs are buyers, and it's almost 36,000 odd crores, $4 billion which has come in 10 days.
Which is so that's what I'm trying to tell you over here, right? The conversations all of us are having with fund managers or fund houses, they don't have the fear of keeping sitting on cash versus investment. Their dilemma is the churn they should be doing at this current point in time with the way markets are. You know, that sector rotation is what they are looking at. Versus your retail investor, the fear is exactly what you're talking about. So I think that's the diversion that you're seeing between the two set of investors.
And interesting, Hersh, if you look at the stock delivery data and put everything in perspective, the volumes are not very high in that sense, right?
Yes.
Means yesterday we saw defense companies, and for 2 days we are seeing defense companies running up. Today there is some correction which is there, but what we are seeing is that, of course, there's a lot of speculative trade happening in defense companies. The delivery volumes are only 30%, 20% in all this, which is happening. And coupled with the fact that while the market broadly has been flat, and the Nifty may have you know, regained some 5% from the lows, we are still the markets is pretty much flat in that sense, and we have seen 35,000 crores of inflows coming in.
So, in fact, when you're talking about markets, I think Somit from the research team, he was just pulling out this one data point, which is saying that since Liberation Day, sensex across is the best performing index.
True, and if you look at the BlackRock interview we did with Vivek Paul, and he's saying the same thing. He's saying the returns for large caps will be more than the benchmarks in India.
Correct. 6 to
especially.
12 months,
Six-
I think, is what he's saying
Yeah.
is the gestation
Gestation
period.
period.
But
Yeah.
India is
Yes.
the best place
Best
if you have to talk
place.
about the large caps.
Because the flows are now coming out of China and coming into India. Interestingly, if you look at the China manufacturing data today, it shows a lot of slowdown in April happening in manufacturing, and that's primarily because of the trade war which is happening there. So the growth target of 5% which China is talking about is also under question mark, which is, and we are still at 6.5% growth.
Correct.
Which is there. So, from the global fund managers' point of view, allocating into India minus the risk which is coming across the border, which is there, and it should be short term in nature. That's a fair play, which I think everyone is taking care of.
Absolutely.
But
Your sector is buzzing.
Yeah.
Nifty Bank is down a 0.25%, and हमारा big boy
Not too bad.
Bajaj Finance.
In fact, before we move forward to another topic, one of the questions that's coming in right now, which our producers are asking us to take, is what's your view on Zomato? Also, District can beat Book My Show and
उसमें हम आते हैं, पर एक्चुअली पहले
पहले
बजाज फाइनेंस का करते हैं, because
Okay.
that's earnings which, and you've been very bullish on Bajaj Finance. Yesterday you were saying that you're expecting the ROCE or return on assets to be around 5% or so, but now we are talking about 4.2 to 4.6% return on assets.
So two things. One is that when we had spoken about Bajaj Finance maybe 6-7 months back, I had highlighted that valuations had compressed very, very sharply to historical levels. Even today, the valuations are lower than historical levels. The problem with the numbers this time around is that your credit cost has gone up. So we were, for viewer context, the expectation was that credit cost will be around the 2% number. It came in at 2.33% for the quarter ended Q4 FY25. What this has actually done is it's given a bit of a drag with regard to how FY26 outlook looks like. How do they justify the additional credit cost before I go to FY26 outlook is what the management is saying is that we did not anticipate the credit cost to slip as much as it had in FY25. Therefore, we have reassessed the way in which we model credit cost, which is more conservative than is required by the RBI. And therefore, due to this remodeling, we've had to recognize an additional 360 crore of credit cost in the current period itself. As a result of that, what has happened is your credit cost has seen a spike. Ideally, it was 1.97%, which is below the 2% mark, but we've had to recognize 2.33% because of this reason. One more point.
Sure.
But profit after tax was largely in line with expectations. And that is because of tax. But because of this ECL, what they've done is they've tapered down on their growth for FY26, which they've brought in at 24 to 25%. That's what they are saying is the FY26 growth guidance. The overall growth guidance in the medium term remains 25 to 27%. And the ROA, ROE metrics they've tapered down on because they have changed this ECL model. They are now saying instead of 4.6 to 4.8% ROA, they will do 4.3 to 4.7% ROA. And ROE, which was 21 to 23% band, they brought it down to 19 to 21%.
Give me
Because they are
give me a
saying this is how.
one understanding of it. Okay, I understand the part of credit cost going up and all, but why is the credit cost going up?
Because
That is a moot, right? Is the business model in such a fashion? I can understand the part that they have to recognize more credit cost because they have to be more conservative as per RBI, but there must be a reason why the credit cost is going up.
So this year has been a tough year for unsecured in general. You look at how SBI cards has done. You look at how some of the other core unsecured lending companies have done. There are very few, but portfolios within companies in unsecured have done badly. We've not seen growth in terms of some of the other pockets with regard to unsecured. For example, HDFC has been reducing their unsecured pie of total loans over the last 2 to 3 years. This year has been a year where they've grown, but otherwise 2-3 years they have reduced or tapered down with regard to growth in unsecured. So those elements is what has affected Bajaj Finance as well.
But I think another aspect to this is even the kind of concerns or the slowdown they've been witnessing in the B2C segment in rural India.
But that is starting to come back, Hiran. So there are hints of that.
But that was
coming
one
back.
of the reasons I
Yes.
think initially also
Yes. So
where
that was
they
a concern.
had to look at credit costs being
Yes.
elevated.
I get
right?
that.
Yes.
My
Yes, you are right.
my question here is that okay, you're talking about unsecured risk which is coming into the balance sheet, and that's why you are moderating your risk management in such a way that you recognize early warnings which is there. It also means that for the industry as a whole, we've seen many of the NBFCs now migrating away from unsecured to just secured.
Yes.
Because they don't want to take that kind of risk. Bajaj Finance was supposed to be having a system or tech in such a way that they can manage and gauge the customer and the capability of paying back, right? Means within the industry, it has the best metrics in terms of analytics or tech or whatever you call it. It is. You are saying despite that, you are going to have a moderation coming in because there is a risk to unsecured, which raises a bigger question.
So
Not
it's-
just for Bajaj
So
Finance.
the downside, and see, I'm not in favor of what has happened this quarter or this year for Bajaj Finance. All I'm trying to say is let's
No, I'm not
compare-
talking about Bajaj Finance.
Let's
I'm
compare
talking
business
about
to business.
I'm talking about the messaging which is coming from Bajaj Finance with respect to unsecured loans, saying that now it's getting to a level where our tech and analytics are not able to manage. So
That's
we need,
not what they're saying.
So that's
That's
why
not
I
what
have
they're
to
saying.
do a much more conservative credit risk management.
I am not of the opinion that that's what they're saying. So you can have a different view.
No,
and I
no.
respect your view.
No, I'm trying to
But
say-
I think what they are trying to say is that the year has been a tough year. What we predicted didn't happen. So there was a little bit of more unpredictability. So
But
we are going to taper down for the next
in fact,
year.
if you see in terms of history, if you have to talk about FY25, the asset quality was not that great for rural India and your two-wheeler segment.
Correct.
Right? And
Yes.
that is what has worsened. You're talking about still, even if you're saying, Hersh, that there is that cycle reversal happening with regards to rural India, but they're still far away from it. So I think, to be fair, there is pain further.
There-
Because
If we have to put
and
it
why I
down,
say that
you know,
is
yeah.
three things. One, they're talking about growth rates moderating, which
Yes.
basically means that for a company like an NBFC, if I'm moderating my growth rate or projections, it basically means I'm curtailing my lending in way, and that means I'm going to remove certain strata of the consumers where I feel that they will not be able to pay, and it will
Very
create
possible.
which is there,
Very
right?
possible. Yes,
Now,
that is the messaging.
That's the messaging which is very clearly going
I
across.
agree with you.
Right? The
Yes.
second thing which is there is that for a company which like Bajaj Finance, which has good tech and system, and everyone wants to emulate the kind of systems they have in place, they are facing that.
Yes.
So imagine the other NBFCs
others
which
are-
are going to be rogered in that sense, right?
Yes.
Means
The others
I'm
have
talking from
faced
that point
a
of
lot of pains.
I'm talking about this systemic
A
risk
lot
which
of
which
pain.
has been
No
highlighted
doubt.
by Bajaj Finance in a
No
very
doubt.
subtle manner.
No
By that is what the message should, which is
100%.
sending
There
to
is no doubt.
the unsecured thing, because I remember very clearly Geo Financials last year moved away from unsecured to purely secured.
Yes.
They don't do any unsecured. They have some portion of it which they, as and when it
Running
gets
down.
running down, which is happening. There are others also now bringing down. SBI cards is there. So your cards business is still going for an unsecured thing where there is going to be, and there even the cards business, all banks and all other issuing agencies
RBL.
like RBL
is one
are
of those.
curtailing, or they are curtailing the relationships.
Yes.
If I'm not wrong, Bajaj Finance had a RBL relationship, I think, right?
Yes,
They
cards
cut,
business.
they cut down that
They've
relationship.
totally
They
stopped
stopped
that
that.
now.
So that means the card business, which was linked to banking clients, are also showing that kind of risk which is coming in, right?
No, you are
And that's-
absolutely right on that.
So
count.
I think what Bajaj Finance as a strategy is doing is they're trying to churn.
They're doing the best thing. I'm not, no doubt about it.
So they're trying to reduce their exposure
Yeah.
to the less profitable and riskier portfolios, and from a longer term perspective, improve the quality of the portfolio.
True.
Now, taking that into consideration, this mid-term pain that you're seeing is where your credit costs are then increasing, right?
Correct.
So, yes, from what Sajeet is also saying, there will be mid-term pain, but a longer-term play where the book will look absolutely clean.
True.
Then.
You know, it's something like saying आपका सिबिल स्कोर अगर पहले आपको बजाज से 650 के नीचे मिलता था, अब 650 से नीचे नहीं मिलेगा, ऊपर ही मिलेगा या 700 के ऊपर ही मिलेगा. That's a CIBIL score under which I will give you. You know, those kind of things which will come into place, and that's the thing. So it's nothing to do with the way Bajaj is doing it. It's the messaging which has been sent across for NBFC and unsecured books.
And what they continued reiterating on the call yesterday was, we are looking at this not from a short-term perspective.
Exactly.
We are looking at this from a long-term perspective, from a business sustainability perspective, and that's why we believe this. And so let's be honest about it. 25-27% AUM versus 24-25% AUM.
ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं है. ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं है.
I mean, it's
nothing.
3
That's
percentage points.
नहीं, कुछ नहीं. And that
Yeah,
too on a
but
big,
the stock-
and that too on a big base.
The stock is taking a beating sentimentally with the way things have happened. So there are two things to it. One is that how the stock is performing in trade today. I believe that it's more of a sentimental reaction. The materiality of it is not large, and Axis Securities also spoke to us today. Very similar view coming from them.
Yeah.
There are not too many companies which can do 25% PAT growth on a
consistent basis, on a higher base, every
year
quarter.
after year after year.
Yeah, exactly.
You had HDFC, which was probably in that 20 to 21%. Every time, right?
So I
Yeah,
think they're
it's
moving to that model, saying that this is the growth target I have, and I'm not going to exceed, I'm not going to be aggressive beyond it, basically, right? In that sense.
See, mind you, it's a management which has always outperformed its guidance. This has been 1 year where they've not been able to do that. They've tapered down on growth in Q4 as well. It's been the slowest quarter of growth in as long as I can remember, 4.5% sequential.
It also gives you an indication about how discretionary spends or spending in our economy is going to be in the next 1 year. It is going down, and this is going to be further tightening, which is going to happen.
But when you talk to AC makers, I spoke to Havells, we spoke to, I think, which was the other company?
Voltas
I don't
or
recollect.
no?
With
Blue Star.
Havells, very categorically, Lloyds and the Concall also, and we spoke about it earlier, mentioned, when the conversation was about the parts which are missing, I forget what was, the compressors, right? Now, जब
AC नहीं बिक रहा तो compressors
क्या करेंगे कि नहीं है, and that's the day when the government did lift that
ban
right?
from China, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But still, that's the situation. But guys, one thing, if you want to hear more in terms of Bajaj Finance as to what are the good points, what are the negatives, you should be watching India Market Close today, where Hersh will give you the bull and the bear case for a Bajaj Finance. So keep an eye on India Market Close today.
Okay, let's take some of the questions. Zomato is something which you're talking about. What's your view on Zomato? Also, District can beat Book My Show. It's not about District beating Book My Show. It's about Zomato. When you look at, or Eternal, let me put it, the company's name is Eternal. My view is that it's a pain which is going to happen for next 3 quarters. In Q4, there has been an aggressive addition of dark stores by Eternal or Blinkit in that sense. I think I was reading a Morgan Stanley or a Bernstein report on how dark stores are doing in Q4. Roughly, today we have 150 cities where you have quick commerce going in. I think Blinkit added nearly 1,300 odd stores in Q4. So there is an aggressive there, and that's going to bring in some kind of pain in terms of losses. So beware of the losses for the next 2 to 3 quarters. District is, yes, it's an app which is growing handsomely, but it's still not profitable in that sense to make a dent to the overall P&L of Zomato. It needs to grow. Book My Show is totally a different game in that sense. So I don't think they have reached the level of Book My Show. The intention is to, but I don't think it's more restricted, more to do with food and dining and
Yes, no, so they do events also, and that's the
events they have
reason why the
started.
question about
They're-
Book My Show,
they're-
but the market share of district right now is way lower
way
as
lower.
compared to where a Book My Show
Yeah,
is,
they did
right?
couple of
One-
big events this year, right?
One big concern, sir, is this and Hiral, is the fact that largest chunk of Eternal's top line comes from food delivery.
Yes, and that's slowing
Right?
down.
That's slowing down. The other lever, therefore, was quick commerce, Blinkit and the like. Now you have Amazon entering the fray, Flipkart entering the fray. You know, these
Reliance
guys,
coming in and talking about it.
Reliance talking about it. You had other players as well who are actively looking at this as an opportunity. And therefore, what you're going to likely see is a large amounts of cash burn to continue, at least on this business. This was the fast growing business of Zomato and there, or Eternal, however you play it. And therefore, you run the risk basically of this war with regard to cash burn lasting longer than expected. Right? And then you have a secondary problem. So one is the war with regard to cash burn, pure cash burn. The other is to achieve profitability by ensuring that AOVs go up, AOVs meaning average order values go up, etc., etc. So all of that will happen only.
I think we
after
had
all
a
of
very
this.
good
But if you
discussion
think-
with
but if you think about
Bernstein
the-
today, right?
Yeah. But if you think about Zomato, the profits that they've been showing as well, the recently.
It's not coming from operations.
It's coming in from the
Other income.
The fixed income interest, right?
Yeah.
That's where it's coming from.
From.
But operationally, it is loss making. That's one. And the drag that Blinkit has been on the business is a major concern. And that is the reason why you have majority of your analysts who've gone and downgraded recently and cut the target
You're sitting
price.
on 18,000 crores or, okay, 16 to 18,000 crores of cash in your books. You have deployed it in fixed income and NCDs and bonds and other stuff. You're not disclosing where you've done it, but you're getting
तो
income from there.
1200 करोड़ तो उधर से आ ही रहा है.
हाँ, तो वो
उधर से
आएगा
ही
ना
आ रहा है.
इस बार. So Q4 में अगर number positive होगा तो मतलब we should not be surprised. Go into the numbers and see where the numbers are coming from.
Whereas
And
Book My Show in itself is a profit making business.
Yeah, I
per
think it
se.
is. It
I
is.
think.
And therefore, you know, in terms of competition, Book My Show has that leverage and that bandwidth, plus it's unlisted.
Yes.
And
So
with
all of that.
Zomato, plus the other thing what's troubling people is the strategy from a leadership perspective. I think recently you had the CEO who resigned. I think one more person who was moved internally as well into another position. So there is that
Food
little
delivery
bit of
business.
some
Yeah.
movement I don't recollect. But there has been that little bit of skepticism in terms of the stability with regards to the leadership team. So across, there are pain points. Valuations are still very high. Now, what you should be doing, I think it gives you the answer.
Yeah, but IndusInd, this before we move to the
Okay,
second
yes. So IndusInd, so okay, and I have slightly
you're losing
strong
words.
views. No, I have slightly strong views here, and therefore
Acha,
take
I
a
want to
call.
hear that now.
So first off, this I believe is a big negative. Is again my view is that it's a big negative because this is not just a CEO resignation. I believe it's an
RBI
RBI
led-
chabi, which has led to the CEO resignation. It's I don't
Apparently, you
think
know,
it's
Vishy
that
tells me
easily-
that the RBI called up the board and told that what is the board doing after all these reports which have come in? What are you waiting for?
Correct. So there are 2-3 negatives which could likely come out. Now, if the board is able to appoint a capable leader, and there is no dearth of capable leadership within the banking sector existing, there are enough good leaders out there. If they are able to appoint a good capable leader, you could well see the bank turn around even as quickly as the next 2 to 3 quarters, because the leader will come in, he'll try and plug all the loopholes in the next 2 quarters, and
Yeah. But-
after that the book will be clean.
I think I have a very different opinion on this, taking into consideration history. Yes, Bank,
Yes,
RBL,
yes,
ICICI.
yes.
Take into consideration similar situations where you had the existing who went away. When the new people came in, it took them almost 2 to 3 years
Yes.
to reach. First is clean up the books. Once you clean up the books, you have your strategy where you're thinking of from your perspective as to what will work.
Yes.
Because you do not really want to follow what the previous leader followed because of the concerns, right?
Correct.
So I think more than 2 to 3 quarters, my read is 2 to 3 years for that stability to come in and for the trust factor to build in.
Correct. So Hiral, see, the key point will be this. If the board is going to appoint a MD CEO, then it's likely going to be from the private sector.
Possible.
If it's going to be a PSU banker, ex-PSU banker appointed, then it's a big red flag. Because
A red
that
flag
means...
and
Because that means the RBI is not comfortable at all, and they have pushed in someone to be MD CEO.
that is one part.
And that will mean that it's a 2-3 year cleanup. That's where this starts to
This,
play out.
and,
This
and
is
the
where
other
the
thing is,
skepticism
and
comes
the
in.
other thing
So
is, they
look
have
for-
to get in someone before the 3 months ends, because it's going to be like a headless chicken, right?
Yes.
No one.
No CFO, no CEO.
Yeah, and at
Who's
a
gonna do
bank,
the analyst
at
call?
a financial
That's the
institution,
first question
if there
that I
is
asked
no
myself
direction in
yesterday.
terms of departments,
Look
I mean,
from,
it's a headless chicken.
Look from a point of view of, we're looking from a point of view of markets and stock price and other stuff.
I'm
Look
talking from a depositor's perspective.
Look from the point of the RBI. What is the RBI's key concern? That the money of depositors in IndusInd should be secure. Now, उसके लिए अगर मुझे PSU को लेकर आना है तो मैं PSU को लेकर आऊँगा. उसके लिए मुझे प्राइवेट को लेकर आना है मैं प्राइवेट को लेकर आऊँगा. My concern is not the equity investor because he is taking a 100% risk. My concern is the depositor. I don't want to run on that bank to happen, and I want to safeguard. And IndusInd is now under a very close scrutiny of the Reserve Bank of India. So they are watching it every day. So they will get the most conservative person to come and do it. Simple as that.
Maybe. Or
And-
they may give
and
the
it-
board some amount of credit and say, okay,
Apparently,
you've
3
done your
names have been
job.
provided to RBI, and they have to come and select that. And some names are,
Have you been hearing this? Sorry.
I saw one IFL report which mentioned 3 or 4 names,
Mine.
including
Then
Rajiv
I haven't
Anand.
heard.
Rajiv Anand's name was there because he retired from
So
the
that I've heard that
हाँ.
yesterday that some top private sector bankers' names are floating, are making the rounds. But I
Yeah.
didn't know that's not official.
It's not
I'm-
official. It's
I'm
not official.
sorry.
It's an IFL
So
report. I think they were
Yeah,
mentioning
then
some.
yes, then that even
But
I've
point
heard.
is that they will bring in a person who will have some credibility and who will bring stability. And credibility and stability for the depositor,
100%.
not for the equity
Not
investor.
exactly.
That's what I'm trying to say, sir. If it's a private sector banker, this will likely be taken favorably because things have not gone out of control. If it's a PSU banker,
50% गिर गया यार, उससे ज़्यादा अब नीचे जाएगा क्या? मतलब कितने 0.6 है ना?
0.8 times है अभी,
हाँ.
चढ़ गया है अब. It's
हम तो
from
that last time
650, it's gone up.
to 800 or something.
Yeah, so it's 20-25% up. But sir, the underlying point being exactly this, that the concern will arise, and it takes a big hit in terms of sentiment for the investor. You will not have visibility for at least this quarter as to what's happening.
See,
next quarter जब आएगा तब बोलेंगे कि
अगले
भाई
2 क्वार्टर में वॉश आउट है.
Correct.
From a growth point of view and kitchen sinking point of view. Simple as that. You have the top 2 people who were at the helm, who managed it badly, and 2 audit report के बाद आपने you were asked to resign or you were forced to resign.
नहीं, आपने स्टेक बेच दिया सर.
नहीं वो तो
तकलीफ वो हुआ है.
नहीं तकलीफ तो आपने 1800 में बेचा. सिंपल एज दैट. अभी 800 में नहीं बेचा है, 1800 में बेचा आपने वो. बट पॉइंट ये
That's
है,
where it's ridiculous.
Guys,
वही
when we're
point.
talking of something like this, SBFC Finance, just a recent announcement where Pankaj Podar,
SGB Finance.
yes, SBFC,
SBFC okay
Yeah.
हाँ
Pankaj Podar, who's the chief risk officer,
हाँ
and VM Manish, who's the COO, both have resigned with immediate effect.
So
What does that tell you? What's happening?
It says basically that there is a very severe RBI scrutiny now on risk management, which is
It's, I
coming.
mean, this has just come right now.
Yeah,
as we
means
speak.
RBI is now saying that I'm not going to tolerate all these things. If you're not there, you are out in that sense. Now, SBFC Finance is a company which is not much tracked, उतने extensively नहीं है. If you start tracking it, then you will get to know कि भाई क्या हो रहा है उधर. But point is that in the case of IndusInd, I think next 2-3 quarters is going to be a muted one. A committee of executives will not take a decision because they will always be looking over the shoulder saying कि भाई कल को एक audit committee आ जाएगी, कुछ हमारे सर पे गिरेगा. Simple as that. And that is what is going to happen in private sector. They will go into a shell. We've seen this happening in public sector banks where decision making comes to a halt. Means it's a status quo. जो चल रहा है चलने दो, जब नया आएगा वो देखेगा. Simple. So that's going to happen here as well, and that's why it's going to be next. The quicker the RBI comes out with the name for the next one, the better it is, and the quicker the next one takes charge, the better it is.
Yeah, and we've been saying this, that it's justified for him to quit. So anyway, so that's the view with regard to an IndusInd.
Yes.
That being said, of course, it's looking reasonable in terms of valuation.
Abhishek
Equity
Dave,
valuation
real
could be a
estate.
risk.
Shed some light on real estate sector. I can't see
It's
any
just
light.
the sentiment. Yeah, there's no light because sentimentally the sector is moving today, but there is no trigger as to what's happening with real estate.
Oberoi reality, you know, I was having this argument with Anushi.
Yeah, no launches.
Launch. I mean, why should you look at launches? You look at revenue. Cash flow तो आ ही नहीं रहा है.
नहीं, वो तो revenue में translate होएगा ही ना. Launch नहीं है तो प्री सेल्स नहीं हुआ है ना.
अरे प्री सेल्स में आप 10% देके 2000 दिखाते हो, 90% तो सिर्फ बैलून है ना.
Agreed.
हाँ तो फिर जब तक रेवेन्यू नहीं आएगा वो रेवेन्यू कैश फ्लो में कन्वर्ट नहीं होगा. नहीं हो रहा है तो. And if you look at Oberoi's case, their inventory days have gone up to about 2,000 days. तो वैसे year on year देखोगे तो 150-200 दिन ऊपर चले गए उनके.
So Sajeet, what's happening in real estate according to me is projects which are luxury, which are beyond that
10-20 crores.
20-30 crores are the ones which are selling. That's where the money is. And if you have to slice and dice companies who have that portfolio, there you will see the sales happening, number one. Two, your affordable, nothing happening.
And I'll tell you why it's not happening.
And your mid, nothing happening because mid में inventory नहीं है. Affordable में the prices, in a way, if you have to compare it to the ready reckoner and everything, has gone way beyond as to what would have been affordable.
True. And that's happening, and it's happening to a micro market like Mumbai because of the kind of redevelopment which is happening, which is there. So, you know, जितने भी नए नए प्रोजेक्ट्स आ रहे हैं वहाँ पर नहीं होगा क्योंकि आपके रीडेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट्स में आइदर यू गेटिंग 30% मोर एरिया एंड यू बीन पेड दैट रेंटल फॉर नेक्स्ट 5 years एंड उसके ऊपर यू हैव 40% मोर फ्लैट्स which are coming in there. So there's an over supply which is coming, as you said, redevelopment 3 to 15 वाले जो सेगमेंट है वो उसमें आ रहा है, स्पेशली सबर्ब्स में. तो we've seen in अंधेरी itself, you know.
Sajeet, South Bombay was not a market which was touched for redevelopment. And that is, every second building you go to South Bombay is a redevelopment project right now. In fact, recently I think Mihika, Doshi, who was a part of media, had written an article on Bloomberg, I was reading, where her own building on Nepean Road is going under redevelopment, and she was writing an interesting story about it, right? So, Nepean Road, I mean, I had not heard of a redevelopment project on those areas. All of that is picking up. That is one part of the story. The second part of the story is now whether you should be looking at real estate companies or companies which have a high yield in terms of rentals. Because
so then you're looking at the REITs and the InvITs, right?
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah.
Because one, the inventory, okay, redevelopment हो रहा है, but तुम्हें किधर तो जाना पड़ेगा ना? किधर जा रहे हो आप? You have to go to something in terms of where flats are available, which is not the case. There's less supply in terms of flats available to rent. And taking that, your mind space or your InvITs, what happens to all of that is to be seen because no one is talking about them.
S. Narain is. We spoke about this yesterday. S. Narain, I was listening to a podcast of S. Narain and he was saying that how commercial real estate hasn't done anything for the last 5 years in terms of rental yields and prices. You could well see a tailwind with regard to both of them over the next year or two. So he said that's one pocket he would like to be in. That's what he has.
Which basically means that your REITs are the ones which there's a couple of REITs and InvITs which are there in place, and that gives you a good distribution income going forward. Simple as that.
Perfect.
Okay, you have Mrinal which is asking, US-India trade deal is signed. Yeah, if it is signed, this will surely include low tariff for high-end bikes and SUVs. Also, Tesla's entry happens. So, is the trade deal negative for M&M, Tata Motors, Aisha? No, it's not. Means the market is so wide. Ticket size is just 34%. Assume करो 0 tariff में आता है. हाँ. Assume मतलब आज की डेट में 100% है. तब भी वो 35 से 50 लाख की गाड़ी है.
Correct.
कितने लोग खरीदते हैं वो गाड़ी? Simple as that. So you have that market for Tata Motors and M&M which is there.
टाटा मोटर्स का स्टार्टिंग प्राइस 20 लाख है.
हाँ.
जो बंदा 20 लाख में खरीद रहा है वो 40 लाख में नहीं खरीद सकता है. Totally
नहीं, दूसरे
different
ये
cohort, totally different market.
ये वही वाली बात हो गई कि आप एक वॉच की दुकान में जाते हैं और आपको 25,000 की वॉच खरीदनी है तो आप टाइटन नहीं खरीदेंगे, आप टैगोर या कुछ और खरीदेंगे, जबकि टाइटन भी उतनी अच्छी गाड़ी बनाता है 25,000 में, सॉरी गाड़ी बनाता है 25,000 में. सिंपल एज दैट. You know, it's a fact, right? I mean, I will not spend 25. I will not buy. I mean, you know, I was speaking to one of the watch guys and he said कि नहीं, Titan की भी इतनी expensive आती है, it's much more sophisticated, much more good looking. But people don't want to spend that much amount on a Titan. They want to spend. They'll buy something more. You know, the Swiss watches and all other. I'm not a watch person. You may be one.
Yeah, all of them only आ जाएगी ना.
So, so
and then Hersh always belongs to the Rolex and the Rados.
Sure, thank you, Hiral. आपके मुंह में
I don't wear watches, right?
But point being that so the higher ticket cars will get more affected. Something like a Jaguar Land Rover sales in India might get affected, but maybe not. Tata Motors.
पर Jaguar Land Rover 80 से 1 करोड़ के ऊपर वाली गाड़ियाँ हैं.
So वो टेस्ला जो उसके जो हायर मॉडल्स है उससे
वो टेस्ला के सारे मॉडल एक साथ नहीं आएंगे, वो एक मॉडल से टेस्ट करेगा मार्केट में.
So yeah, unlikely. That's at least seems to be the consensus.
You did KFIN yesterday, right?
We did
Yes,
KFIN
we spoke
yesterday.
to
Yes. So there's one question from Vigin Dharan. Vigin is asking KFIN versus CDSL versus CAMS, which one is executing better?
Difficult to say again because KFIN is doing a lot in terms of international as well. CDSL is a niche player with basically one major client, and therefore that's how CDSL does its work. CAMS, so all three, frankly, again, are plays on Indian capital markets. All three's growth rates are different. All three provides slightly differentiated set of services, and all three's valuations are also different. So you may want to look at commentary.
Yeah, but one thing is common. There is a growth coming into the capital markets.
Yes,
and these companies are forming various portions of the capital market.
Correct.
So the growth rate might vary, but all of them will grow in that sense.
Yes.
But if you want to rank them, how will you do it? KFIN, CAMS and CDSL or CDSL? How is it? Mine would be KFIN, CAMS and CDSL.
No, I think mine would be CDSL, CAMS and then KFIN.
CDSL will grow much faster?
I have a feeling because if you think about it from the mutual fund aspect, CDSL, CAMS is a market leader.
Yes.
True.
Right?
But number of folios are declining. The growth in folios are declining.
In KFIN?
No, in mutual fund as a whole.
In mutual fund as a whole, yes, but KFIN will continue to have the best market share there. Because from what I understand, they do 26 out of 46 mutual funds. I mean AMCs, they have tie-ups. And those AMCs here, unfortunately, they don't move away.
Even KFIN has a tie-up with CAMS also for mutual funds. I don't know what is that about.
So that's a consolidated account statement which comes of both of them together, right? In that sense, which is there.
So so I think there are arrangements and each has a niche. You'll have to pick your niche.
Yeah, so I think for me it's still CDSL, CAMS and KFIN because
I don't have an opinion. I'm sorry.
And reason being KFIN, in terms of growth, if you talk about the international business that he's talking about, it's just a new entry. They made an acquisition. There is going to be a drag in terms of making their position felt. So that
100%.
So that will be a pain for the next couple.
But that's also a counter. The long-term argument could be that's a counter to any domestic slowdown as well.
Correct, it is.
Possible.
But
that's something short-term pain.
And some better yields.
But better yields.
He was telling us yesterday the yields are double in the international market versus the Indian market.
So profitability comes from there, right? In that sense. Final question for you, IDFC. Should I shift from IDFC to Federal Bank?
So first off, Federal Bank's numbers expected today. I would suggest let's wait for the numbers and then we'll talk about it.
I think you should be watching NDTV Profit to hear the management that Hersh will be speaking to as well
tomorrow morning. So I'll be speaking to the management. But I think in terms of the IDFC's numbers, they weren't good at all. I think we've covered it plenty of times. For the sake of repetition, growth has come off sharply. You've got couple of pockets where there's a lot of pain, something like a microfinance. They've lent aggressively to some of these areas and they are seeing a lot of pain on their P&L account as a result of that. ROAs have come off. They are continuously diluting equity. So those are just some downsides. But at the same time, it's trading at 1.3 times. I want to wait and watch as to what Federal comes out with in terms of a number. Thereafter, look at the valuation of Federal Bank, and thereafter we'll assess.
I think we
it
should
as
do
to whether
a
the risk reward is good or
means
not.
on TV whenever the Federal Bank numbers comes in, maybe on
Federal
Friday.
versus Equitas.
Do a
No,
comparison.
Federal versus
versus
IDFC Bank.
IDFC.
Bank.
ठीक है,
A pair trade kind of thing. How it works.
करेंगे.
Perfect.
कौन है क्वेरिस्ट कौन है?
क्यूरिस्ट है हमारा राकेश शुक्ला.
राकेश शुक्ला जी, हम ये करेंगे. We will do this.
Super. I think.
So we wrap it. We wrap up the market with which is flat. I think IC बंद होने वाला है. Nifty IT is down.
But what's the reason to complain? We've just made 10% in the last maybe 15 odd trading sessions. I don't think.
And
No,
the
no.
best performing
You know,
index
the-
since
I think-
Liberation
I
Day
think-
on the sensex. So
No,
I don't think so.
yeah.
We have any reasons to
Yeah.
complain
we have no
versus the
reason.
others.
We have no reasons to be crying about it because we're going
I
to
think
end.
April is going to be one of the best months. I don't know in how many.
Always is.
We will end April with
is the second best month always.
3.5% we will close April if we are going to close flat today, which is very good in that sense. आप सबके portfolio में अगर आपने ऐसे ही रखा है फिर भी ऐसे बढ़ जाएगा.
I mean,
Nifty is up 3.5%.
2.5% is the 10-year average of April.
Correct.
And we are way
only
above that.
July is
yeah.
the only other month where you got a better return.
Exactly.
10 years.
It's only the nervousness which is there. So I think today's expiry as well happening
And
of Nifty
it's a
options.
truncated week. Tomorrow is a holiday.
Tomorrow
right?
is tomorrow is a holiday. It's a Nifty options expiry which is coming in. A lot of option positions may not get rolled over to Friday. And if there is nothing coming in over the week over this holiday, then we might see some buying interest coming in on Friday.
Yeah. But guys, I think the best is make the most of tomorrow's holiday because this is the last one. After this, you don't have next
gonna make
holiday
the most
coming
of
in terms of June and July. You have to wait till the 15th of August for a market holiday, so make the most of it.
Yeah.
And by the way,
I'm putting in some leaves.
yes, as we end, Ether IPO has been fully subscribed.
Yes.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. चले?
चलिए.
भागिए बुल वर्सेस बेट करना है ये पहले बोल बजाज स्टॉप करो अरे सुनेगा तो if he's tracking BFSI he has to that's the reason why I made him do UCO and I kept